Greetings, everyone. My name is Sundarayo. I work at Elite Techno Groups, and this is going to be the first video of our two-part video series for just the introduction to the suspension design. And in the introduction to suspension design, we're going to have six topics that we will be learning. And in the first video, we will be learning about the suspension purpose, the types of suspension, the camber, and in the second video we will be learning about KPI or kingpin inclination and scrub radius, caster, and the toe changes, and we will learn how these characteristics actually influence in the car's ride and handling system, and how we can actually tune the car with these aspects and make the car with a much better design. So let's move to the first topic of today, which is going to be the purpose of the suspension design. So the purpose of the suspension design, it's basically two main functions, which is ride and handling. So ride is nothing but comfort. It's how comfortable the driver is inside the car when he sits, and if he has to actually drive on an irregular road surface. So if the driver were to drive on a irregular road surface, how much of it is absorbed by the suspension system and how much of it is transferred back to the body and the driver. So this is what the ride part is, and the most optimum suspension design is where the video to the right, where the suspension system actually absorbs all of the irregularities without transferring any of it to the body part. And onto the left, it's more of, you can see how the driver is uncomfortable to sit inside the car and how much of the discomfort that he is facing when the car actually moves on a road surface, on an irregular road surface, which actually causes the car to move, have a rolling motion. So to put it in a simple layman terms, it's nothing but how much of the road irregularities is absorbed by the suspension and how much of it is transferred back to the driver, and how much of it is it's phased, and how can you actually tune your car to have a better ride. So to have a better riding conditions, you would want your suspension to be softer, so that the suspension is the one that absorbs all the road irregularities without transferring all of it to the body. So the harder it is, the less absorbing capacity the suspension has. So for example, the hardest part of the suspension, you can imagine that instead of a damper and spring system, you're actually replacing that with a steel rod. So steel rod is nothing but which has got the hardest suspension. There is nothing that absorbs and it transfers 100% of the road irregularities to the body. So if you actually have connected your wheels with a steel rod, you can imagine how uncomfortable the driver would feel inside the car. So that's the reason, the softer the tire, the softer the suspension system, the better is it for the ride. So the second part of today's of the purpose of suspension is handling. So handling is nothing but how much of the control the driver has in the car. So when the driver is actually taking has to drive in a maneuver, or he has to actually take a sharp turn, a high speed sharp turn, so this it's the control of the driver that he has of the car. That's what determines how good the handling characteristics for the car is. So if you can actually see the image to the left, so what the video to the left, what it does is, the driver, when he is actually taking a sharp turn, notice the inner wheel. So the inner wheel of the turn, it actually tries to move, the body tries to roll in that direction, which actually causes the suspension to compress. And the video to the right, you can actually see that the body is not actually having a rolling motion. The wheels are actually intact and it's not causing a compression of the outer wheel. So this is what we actually call it as a better control of the car, because what happens is, when your car is actually taking a sharp turn, the inner wheel usually loses the road contact surfaces. What it does is, because of the rolling motion, the weight is transferred from the inner wheel to the outer wheel, because of which the normal force that is acting onto the inner wheel is down, it goes down. So to maintain the maximum road contact patch, you would want a much harder suspension so that the suspension actually doesn't compress, and that thereby pushing the wheels down to the ground and also maintaining 100% handling, 100% road contact for the handling, because the more the road contact patch, better frictional force that's the car have, and the car actually has a better handling of the road. So that's the reason why we always say that handling is inversely proportional to the ride, because for the ride you would want the car to have a softer suspension, and for the handling you would want to have a harder suspension. And the extreme condition of using a softer suspension with a high speed cornering is when you have a car actually taking a sharp turn, and you can actually see it in this video that it's the inner wheel that actually during the weight transfer, the weight is transferred so much that the inner wheel actually lifts up. The inner wheel lifts up and it actually stays in the air, and sometimes what it does is it actually goes and it topples. So that's the reason why you would want a harder suspension for the better ride qualities. So now that we have actually taken the suspension purpose, let's move for the second topic of today's video, which is the type of suspension. So the type of suspension, we are basically categorizing it to the two major suspension system, which is dependent suspension system, and the second part is independent suspension system. So dependent suspension system is where the car, one wheel is in direct control, or one wheel is dependent on how the other wheel is interacting with the road surface and how it's actually transferred. So this type of suspension you would actually see when you are driving behind a truck, where this is a differential and it's actually connected through a solid shaft. So what happens is, usually the dependent suspension is connected through what we call it as a leaf spring suspension. So dependent suspension, they usually have leaf spring suspension. So for better understanding of leaf spring, let's look into the video. So what happens is, the front wheel used to have the same length and your flexibility as the rear suspension. But the problem is, the front suspension actually needs to serve two purpose, which is absorbing the road irregularities and also to maintain the vibrations of the engine compartment. So that's the reason you would want the front suspension to be stiffer compared to the rear. The rear suspension is just there for absorbing the road surface. So to make it stiffer, what they did was they reduced the length of these suspension and they made it stiffer. Because the front suspension is stiffer than the rear, the front suspension vibration frequency is higher. So it actually kind of vibrates at a higher frequency than the rear, causing the car to actually have a very unusual behavior and having a complete discomfort. So because of which, what happens is, during a dependent suspension, one wheel is actually transferring the road surface irregularities to the other wheel, thereby causing the wheel to rotate. So what the new change was done is, instead of actually attaching the suspension below the body, they actually attached on top of the body, and instead of using a leaf spring suspension, they used a commonly used coil spring. So this was the first design of what gave birth to the independent suspension. So independent suspension, as you can see, one wheel is directly independent of the other wheel. It doesn't matter how the other wheel is interacting with the road surface, all it cares about how that particular wheel has got the road surface that it interacts with. And with this video you can actually confirm how much better the performance and the ride quality is when you use an independent suspension. So this is the reason why most of the cars nowadays, they actually use independent suspension system, because it has got a much freer movement. The suspension is actually free to move irrespective of how the other wheel is interacting with the road surface, and it has got much better handling capabilities. So like I said, the handling capabilities, it depends on how much of the suspension and the road contact surface it has. So in the previous video, in the dependent suspension system, if it was a right wheel that was actually going on a speed bump, that wheel was actually transferring the load to the left wheel, thereby actually causing this road contact patch to go down. So this has got a much better handling capabilities, because essentially what it's doing is, your your road contact patch will totally depend on what is the road surface like underneath that wheel, but not the other wheel. So it's completely independent of how the road to tire interaction is for the other wheel, and it has got a better integration of dynamics. Like for example, a degree of freedom that these wheels have got much better dynamics of actually taking the load conditions and also interacting with the road surface in a much better fashion. So this is why nowadays all the cars, they use independent suspension. So inside the independent suspension, we are gonna learn three types of independent suspension, of which two we will learn a little bit deeper, and the third one we're going to actually just brush it onto the surface on how it's different from the other two. So the first one of the independent suspension is nothing but McPherson strut. So McPherson strut is where the damper system is actually assembled on top of the steering knuckle. So this is what we call it as a steering knuckle. So the damper is directly attached on top of the steering knuckle. So, and the lower part is actually has what we call it as the lower arm. So this is a kind of like an animation of how a real life strut suspension looks like. Strut suspension where the damper system, the damper assembly is directly attached on top of the knuckle, and you have the lower arm that is attached to the bottom of the knuckle. This is one of the most common suspension system which they use it for the front side of the car, and there are a couple of reasons why they use it for the front side of the car, because most of the cars are front wheel drive. So for the front wheel drive car, as you can see, this actually has a much better road kinematics, a much better clearance below the damper. So when the suspension actually moves, when the car actually moves, the shaft would actually go underneath below the damper without interacting with much of the surface. And because the damper is directly attached on top of the knuckle, all the road irregularities, stress, it's actually directly taken by the damper, which makes the suspension much more rigid. And because it has got just one lower arm at the bottom, it's much lighter to use it. So this is what why we use strut suspension only on the front side of the car and not on the rear suspension. So the second part of the independent suspension is double wishbone. So double wishbone is similar to the strut, but the main difference is, instead of just having one lower arm and the damper is connected directly on top of knuckle like the strut, we have another arm on the top. And the damper is usually mounted onto the lower arm. So this would be the steering knuckle, a reference steering knuckle for the double wishbone suspension, where this is where you have the upper arm mounted, this is where you have the lower arm mounted, and then you have the damper usually attached to the lower arm. And because the damper is attached directly to the lower arm, usually for a steering knuckle of a double wishbone, it's the lower part of the knuckle which is more rigid, because it has to actually withstand a lot more load, unlike the strut suspension where it's the top of the knuckle where you have the damper mounted. That is what makes it stiffer, and it has to be rigid to absorb all the load that the damper actually takes it. So it has got much better degree of freedom and better kinematics, and we will actually learn why the racing cars use double wishbone suspension, because of a concept which we will be learning in next couple of slides called as the camber gain. So the camber gain, it's much more prevalent in the double wishbone suspension than the strut suspension, because of the location where the damper is mounted. So what happens is, usually in a double wishbone suspension, you have the lower arm that accepts all the road irregularities, thereby transmitting that to the damper, right? So because of the damper directly attached to the lower arm instead of the knuckle, so there is this ratio of tire movement with respect to the damper movement. It's what we call it as a motion ratio. So this ratio determines how much of the road's movement on one direction is absorbed by the damper. And as you can see, because of the location of the damper, it's very difficult for the driving shaft to actually pass through the lower arm, pass above the lower arm near the damper system. So it gets really difficult to package this entire entire system when it's a double wishbone suspension. That's the reason why all the commercial cars that we see on the road, if it's a front wheel drive car, there is a high chance that they use strut suspension because it's got much more clearance here for the drive shaft to pass through instead of a double wishbone. But there are few designs which nowadays the company started using where they have something called a damper mount, where there is a mount that is actually coming from the lower arm, and the damper is attached on top of the damper mount, so that the shaft actually goes in between the damper mount, and it has enough room here for the drive shaft. So for example, in cases where the automotive companies decide to use a double wishbone suspension, there is a way out where they actually create a like pattern where the damper is attached on top of the damper mount and the shaft actually goes underneath that. So this is major difference between a damper assembly system in a double wishbone suspension and a similar case in a strut suspension. So the third part of the suspension is going to be multi-link suspension. So the multi-link suspension is very similar to a double wishbone, but instead of having one A arm on the top, one control arm on the top, it's called what we call as individual links. That's the reason the name came out to be multi-link. So you have about 4 to 5 links to actually have absorbed the road irregularities and have got better dynamics. So the damper, just like the double wishbone suspension, the damper spring assembly is actually mounted onto the lower arm, and because it's got multi-link and it's got multi-axis of rotation, this type of suspension, it's got much better ride capabilities than the double wishbone or even the strut suspension. That's the reason all the luxury cars nowadays like Audi Q7, they use multi-link suspension because of the road, because of its the kinematics and the camber gain and all the handling capabilities which a multi-link suspension actually comes with the design. So with this, we will be actually concluding the second topic of today, which is a type of suspension. The last topic for today's video is going to be camber. So camber, if I have to explain in a very simple terms, is how the car looks if you stand in front of the car. So for example, just imagine that you are standing in front of the car and this is the view that you see. So if the top part of the wheels are actually facing towards each other, that's called as a negative camber. And if the top part of the wheels are actually away from each other, that's a positive camber. So negative camber is where they are towards each other, and a positive camber is where they are away from each other. And depending on what the situation is, the camber requirement for a positive or a negative, that changes. But essentially the main purpose of a camber is to make sure that your car, until worse, so you need to maintain the maximum road contact patch in a situation which it is more vulnerable. So depending on what type of a car or what type of a vehicle you're building, the most vulnerable situation changes from that type of car to another. So for example, for a truck, the most vulnerable situation under which it needs to maintain a maximum road contact patch is gonna be when the truck is maximum loaded. So when a truck is maximum loaded, what happens is the body tends to go down. So when the body tends to go down, it actually pulls the upper arm towards itself. So when it pulls the upper arm towards itself, that brings this top part of the wheel towards the body, thereby actually having the change in the road contact patch from a triangle to a square. So for example, if this is the ground, so this is how the road contact patch would look, where you got a maximum road contact patch here, and as it goes towards the body, your road contact patch goes down. And for a negative camber, is just going to be mirror image of this. So if you imagine that the camber is something like this, your maximum road contact patch will be towards the left and it keeps going down when it goes towards the right. So in case of the truck example, the most vulnerable situation under which it needs to maintain a maximum road contact patch is when it's maximum loaded. So when it's maximum loaded, it would actually start with a positive camber, and when the load keeps going up, the body of the truck would actually lower. The CG of the truck will actually lower because of the weight, and this lowering of the body would pull the upper arm towards the body, thereby pulling the top part of the wheel also towards it, thereby actually changing the road contact patch from a triangle to square. In case of a race car, so in case of a race car, we have something called as a camber gain that I have actually told that I'll be explaining it. So the camber gain is nothing but when your car is actually taking a sharp turn like the one that you are seeing in the video. Just concentrate onto the front right side of the wheel. So the front right side of the wheel there, what it does is you would actually see that it is actually in this position, right? It is actually moving, it's got a positive camber. So what happens is there is a body load transfer from the inner wheel to the outer wheel. When it actually has a sharp turn, there is a load transfer that happens from the inner wheel to the outer wheel, and because of the load transfer, for example, this is the body, so the body actually transfers the load when it actually takes a sharp turn from the inner wheel to the outer wheel, thereby pushing the upper arm away from the body. So when there's a load transfer that happens, so because of the load transfer, the body kind of has a rolling motion, something like this, right? So because of the rolling motion, the top part of the arm actually moves away from the body, thereby pushing the top part of the tire, creating a positive camber. So this is what we call it as a camber gain. So camber gain is when, due to some road characteristics, due to some driving characteristics, driving dynamics, there is a camber gain, there is a positive camber that is built into the system. So what the racing cars do is they start off with a negative camber. So they start off with a negative camber, and then when they take a sharp turn and when they actually have the load transfer from the inner wheel to the outer wheel, it starts off with a negative camber, and negative camber plus the camber gain would actually result to something like a zero camber, which will maintain a positive a maximum road contact patch when it actually has a high speed cornering. So during high speed cornering, you actually can see a camber gain in an F1 car, or in an all-terrain vehicle. So you can actually see a camber gain onto the outside tire in an F1 car, or in an all-terrain vehicle, or even in autocross movement. So if you actually can see in the autocross, so if you can actually see this cornering, right? So this is the inner wheel and this is the outer wheel. So in the during cornering, there is a load transfer that happens, because of which the body actually has a rolling motion, right? So rolling motion is a car rotating along this axis from front to the rear. So this axis that you get, your body tends to rotate along that. So because of this weight transfer from the inner wheel to the outer wheel, it actually pushes the upper arm. It actually pushes the upper arm away from the body, thereby causing the load, causing a camber gain. And plus, during a high speed cornering, there is a frictional force, which we also call it as a cornering force. So this cornering force that is acting onto the tire, you can just imagine it to be a centripetal force. Okay, so this centripetal force, because of the frictional force, will actually pull the lower part of the tire towards the body, and because of the weight transfer, it will push the upper part of the wheel away from the body. So this actually results in what we call it as a camber gain, and this camber gain is what is needed for your maximum road contact patch. So if this is one of the event that is going to happen, and this is the most vulnerable situation for a racing car, so what the cars usually do is they go with a negative camber on a normal road, and while they are cornering with the camber gain, if they go from negative camber to a zero camber with the camber gain, you actually get a maximum road contact patch, thereby maintaining the friction surface. So that's the reason why the camber concept is very, very important, to make sure that your car or your vehicle has got a maximum road contact patch under the most vulnerable situation. And what is the vulnerable situation? That depends from the type of vehicle that you're building. That depends on the type of vehicle that you're building. For a truck, that is when the truck is maximum loaded. And for a racing car or for an autocross, that vulnerable situation is gonna be when it's actually trying to corner. It's trying to do a high speed cornering. that is the vulnerable situation at which it needs to have a maximum road contact patch. So depending on the requirement, you change the type of camber, the type of initial camber that you put in your car. So what exactly is the difference between the double wishbone suspension and a strut suspension? So for a double wishbone suspension, it is dynamically more stable because of the degree of freedom and because of the kinematics that is built into the system, because of upper arm also taking the curve into its own way. You have a double wishbone suspension that is dynamically more stable. Strut, it's stable but it's rigid, and the reason why it's rigid is because the damper is directly attached to the top of the knuckle, so because of which you don't get the camber gain. So now that you've understood what the camber gain is, right, so now with this video it's easier for you to understand. So for a double wishbone suspension, when the body transfers the load, it pushes the upper arm, and then that upper arm pushes the wheel that results to a camber gain. But in case of the strut suspension, when the body actually transfers the load, this damper system, it gets really difficult for it to push the knuckle, because its first response would be compression instead of actually pushing the knuckle and actually getting a camber gain. So that's the reason why it's rigid and it's very difficult for you to get the camber gain. The load is usually attached, the load is usually on the lower arm, because the damper is attached onto the lower arm in case of double wishbone suspension. For the strut suspension, the load is on top of the knuckle because the damper is attached onto the top of knuckle. So, and like I explained before, it's got a better camber gain in terms of double wishbone, and in strut it's got a lesser camber gain. And it's got lesser room for the drive shaft, because as we've seen that the drive shaft, if it was to go from the center, the packaging here gets really difficult for your damper to actually be positioned in a way which actually maintains enough clearance for the drive shaft. But in case of strut, because the damper is on top of the knuckle, it has enough room below the damper system for the drive shaft to actually go. And the last part is, it is heavier, it's much heavier because of the additional components. In this case, for example, the double wishbone, the upper arm, and then you have the bushings that is attached. So you have all these components that adds on to the weight and complexity of your double wishbone suspension. For the strut, it's relatively much easier to assemble, much easily serviceable, and it's much lighter because of the number of components that is different here. So with this, we'll move to a quiz. So this in this slide, it's just going to be a quiz, and I'll be actually answering the quiz in the next slide. So I would request you to actually pause this slide, read through the question and try to analyze an answer, and then click on the play option, because I'll be answering in the next slide. So in an Ape Piaggio pickup tempo or an auto rickshaw that you actually see on a day-to-day basis, which has independent rear suspension, what would be the recommended camber for the rear wheels? Right, so is it a positive camber? And a positive camber is where the top part of the wheels are actually away from each other or away from the body. Or is it a zero camber, or is it a negative camber where the top part of the wheels are actually towards each other or towards the body? So again, I would request you to pause it in case if you haven't figured out the answer, because in the next slide I'll be actually going through the answer. So the answer for this question would be A, which is a positive camber. So positive camber is where the top part of the wheel is away from each other. So what happens is, when the most vulnerable situation for an auto rickshaw, under which it has to maintain a maximum road contact patch, is going to be a it's going to be when it's maximum loaded with passengers. So when they have a maximum load of passengers, this body will actually go down, and that will pull the upper arm towards itself. So when the CG goes down, when the body goes down because of the load, it actually pulls the upper arm towards each other, thereby actually making it a zero camber. Okay, so you start off with a positive camber, and with the load, it actually pulls the upper arm towards itself, thereby causing it a zero camber, thereby maintaining a maximum road contact patch. And that's the reason why any heavy trucks or a load based cars, the vehicles which actually takes load from point A to point B, they usually use positive camber because of the load variable that is taken into account. So with this, concludes the first part of the video, and we will actually look into the second video. So what, just to put everything what we have learned so far in a nutshell. So what we have learned is what is the main purpose of a car, which is going to main purpose of a suspension system in a car, which is going to be ride and handling. So ride, one simple word for ride would be comfort, and one word for handling will be control. How much of the control of the car does the driver have under extreme conditions? So that's the first part that we have learned. The second part that we have learned is the different types of suspension. So different types of suspension, what we have learned is it's basically characterized to two: dependent and independent suspension. In the dependent suspension, you have a leaf spring suspension, and in the independent suspension, we have learned three different types: strut, double wishbone, and multi-link suspension. So a strut suspension is where the damper is attached to the top of the knuckle. In double wishbone, it's usually attached to the lower arm, and you have an upper arm that also maintains the stability of the car. And the third one is a multi-link, where you don't have one single arm, you have individual links. So it's got better handling characteristics, better ride characteristics, which is used in the luxury car. And the last part is going to be the camber, where the camber is nothing but how your car tire looks from the front view. And if the top part of the wheels are towards each other, that's a negative camber, and if they are away from each other, that's a positive camber. And then we have learned what we call it as a camber gain. So with this, we conclude the video 1, and stay tuned for the video 2, where we will be learning about the KPI, kingpin inclination, and caster, and the last part is going to be the toe part. So thank you, and keep learning. Thank you.